I'm here this afternoon with Brother Ryan J. Flynn from Ancient York Lodge number 89, the Grand Lodge of New Hampshire, FNAM. Ryan is a Masonic artist, and some of his newer works are quite interesting, and he's going to describe some of the works that he has brought with him today. Ryan, would you tell us what's on the easel right there?
Yes. One of the things that I wanted to bring into Masonry was patents. You hadn't seen them in quite some time. If you look at the patents back in the 19th and early 20th century, there were these grandiose, well-designed certificates. We kind of just use photocopies of them right now. So I decided to do middle-age style versions of them. This is my Celtic one. And the way I do them is I design them by hand, scan them into a computer, and work with them in a computer to age them and get them ready to print. And I print them using G-clay printing, which lasts technically forever. And then once I get the prints, I hand accent them further with 23 karat gold, silver, zinc mix, and copper. And if you can see it, when the light hits it, you'll understand why they're called illuminated documents, because that gold really pops and can be seen from quite far away. And the reason I kind of did this is for example, in my lodge, I hand these out to my new Master Masons. And it just gives you a sense of pride in what you've just accomplished further than the degree. And it's something that you can proudly display. And doing it in a way like this kind of keeps the cost down. I really don't mark them up that much. And makes it so you can give this to someone who's going through your lodge, or your parents or your son, or anybody who's about to become a Master Mason.
Okay, can we see something else that you brought with you today?
This is an interesting piece because I don't know where I'm going with it yet. As you may know, my first Masonic artwork was a pair of faux stained glass windows in Nashua, New Hampshire, and I decided to take that a step further. Right now I have my two windows up and this big York Rite arch in the middle of it, and I had this idea that a rose window would look fantastic in there. So I came up with this design, which is a sketch version of this final piece. And what the design is a Master Mason tracing board. I have the emblems of a Master Mason going around the outside of it. On the inside, I have the emblems and symbols of the officers of the lodge, and finally the final emblem in the letter G in the middle. And my idea is to put this in a shadow box, and while we're giving the Master Mason history and get to the emblems, when we discuss an emblem, it would light up individually, and eventually, once you're done with the degree history, the whole thing would be lit up for the candidate. I haven't presented it to my lodge yet. I'm still working on prices. But the one thing I want to say about this design is I designed it for Masonry. I didn't design it for anybody. So if a lodge were to come up to me and say, we want to put that in our lodge, I will happily give you the design. I just want to see it done. I think it could be a great addition to the craft. So that's where I'm heading with that right now.
And you say the easel that you have there, you have some writing on it. It's done in reverse writing?
So I studied art history, and I was always fond of the Renaissance. I studied in Florence, and I got to see a lot of these codexes, which were basically notebooks by artists that put all their ideas and observations in there. So I like to create them on my own, and I incorporate some of the things that they did back then with a slightly modern twist. So with this note form of the window, I did some reverse writing, which Da Vinci was very famous for, where I'd write some notes, some ideas, like I want to incorporate the flower of life into the background, make sure that the Euclid has magic squares that resemble certain numerical orders that will flow into Masonry, and I even sketched out a magic square up here. And with my art, especially my medieval styled art, I always like to hide stuff in there. So hopefully if someone was to purchase this, or someone just to come up and ask to look at it from me, it's something that you can actually look at for a couple hours and try to find out new stuff, because I can guarantee you there's codes in there, musical notes, a whole bunch of other stuff that you wouldn't see right away.
Okay, and have you got something else you can put up on the...
Yeah. This is a recently completed commission. This was done for a brother in New York who wanted a medieval-style York Rite design. He gave me the text regarding this oath and kind of an idea that what he wanted to do. So I designed a medieval-style design to go around it, and I incorporated scenes from the Templars. I unfortunately am not a Templar yet, but I'm working on it. But this is stuff that's common knowledge through history. So it's more of a historical Templar piece more rather than a Masonic Templar piece. But once I go through the degrees, it'll incorporate more than that. But I have the two knights on the horse praying in a church. A little nod to my history in Italy as I incorporated the dome from Florence into the design, just as a kind of nod to myself. And as I'm a marked Master Mason, I'm about to go through my Royal Arch degree, I put my mark in there as well.
Okay, now you have some interesting stuff over here on the table. We can come over here. You have the opening charge, if we could see that.
So my absolute favorite piece of ritual is the opening charge in Nashua. The ways of virtue are beautiful, knowledge is attained by degrees, wisdom dwells with contemplation. There we must seek her. So what I did is I came up with a medieval style, again, version of the charge. And I wrote it out because it was a semi-public, it was already written out in New Hampshire ritual. So I decided that it would be a safe thing to do. But I incorporated a lot into this. Fibonacci sequence, spiral, and my favorite symbol that's in this is if you look at this pattern on here, you'll see a couple of oddly shaded circles. And what that is they're notes, and it's the opening overture of the Magic Flute, which is obviously Mozart's Masonic work. So there's a lot of stuff in here that I'm not going to get into because I really want people to dive in and look, because I can guarantee you when I've explained it to very few people and they get wowed by it. But I'm very proud of this piece. The first one that I did was for a brother who recently passed and was a huge influence on my life, Brother Jack Kanan. I gave it to him while I was in the hospital after a stroke. And it's just a very personal and emotional piece for me, and one of my favorites I've done so far.
And you have a what we would call a certificate.
Yes, so along with the Celtic one that I showed before, this is another one. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the gold on it yet.
Not yet.
But this is called the Regis patent. Once again, it's a Master Mason certificate, done in the same printing, the G clay, so it'll last forever. And I've incorporated some very familiar scenes of Masonic ritual. I've also incorporated the four tenets of, the four cardinal virtues of Masonry around the compass and square down the bottom. And the reason I call it the Regis poem is, as I'm sure most of you are aware, that the Regis poem is one of the oldest Masonic texts that is out there. And in extremely small lettering, I've incorporated it into the border, so you can read it in a spiral manner and read a significant part of it. I couldn't fit the whole thing in there.
And lastly, we have on the table a trifecta of the middle chamber.
Yes, this was my first artwork other than the windows. While I was junior deacon, I was learning the middle chamber lecture, and I came up with this design of 3 codex pieces while I was working on it. They correspond with 3 main sections of the middle chamber lecture. We have the pillars, in which I've written in pigpen cipher, the cipher that Masons used to use at the turn of the 20th century and before, the dimensions and the little nuances about what the pillars stand for in here. Then moving from the pillars, we got to the stairs, which up here negating some very sensitive words and parts of ritual that I shouldn't be copying down. I incorporated some of the numerology into what the numbers stand for. And finally, geometry, which seems to be the piece that I'm well known for right now. I incorporated some sacred geometry like the flower of life and some more reverse text, and wrote what geometry stood for back then. So I go through the not only geometry, but the different orders of architecture, and some other stuff that also is hidden in there.
Well, you certainly are a Masonic artist of distinction. You have some of these items for sale, do you not?
Yeah.
Your website?
Yeah, I have my website. It's ryanjflynn.com. All of these prints are available to view and share. I try to keep the resolution on it as high as possible because I try to make art that is able to be used in discussion and promotion of Freemasonry. So please go there, take a look, shoot me an email, tell me what you think. I also have a link there for commissions. I'm trying to do more and more commissions and soon tracing boards. And the way that I like to do them is a way that gives back to the lodge. So if you commission a piece from me, I will sell prints and give you proceeds of the prints back to your lodge. So it could be a win-win situation.
So a commission is any work of art that a brother would like to have particularly made in for his what he likes.
Exactly. I had a lodge in Frederick, Maryland, a brother of the lodge in Frederick, Maryland, commissioned me to do a circumpunk piece because they really liked that piece of ritual. And I did that for him, actually drove down to give it to him and presented it to him, and they've been beyond thrilled with it. And it's, with any work of art, and not just mine, if a lodge commissions an artist to do something original for their lodge, it'll really, I believe it brings a sense of pride to your lodge, and it's an identification of your lodge, and it's something you can, gather around and be proud of, just like in the Middle Ages what they did with churches and sculptures. So I truly try to promote the arts as much as possible in the lodge. My lodge has an artist going towards the east, so they're going to get used to talking about art, but I'm always available to discuss if you have ideas for lectures or any educational things. I'm more than willing to help.
Well, we want to thank you for this permission to tape you today, and I hope and wish you well in your endeavors in the artistic and Masonic world.
Oh.